Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the second Spinnaker Organizational Change Management webinar. This morning, we'll be discussing organizational alignment and readiness and its pertinence to any type of supply chain transformation project which your organization may be undertaking. First, a quick introduction for those of you that may not have viewed any of the other webinars to date. My name is Mark Smith. I'm a director in Spinnaker's GA consulting practice with 20 years of supply chain experience spanning business process to strategic road mapping to JDA, Oracle, and SAP implementations across a plethora of industries from consumer product goods to retail, as well as even automotive and some discrete manufacturing. And as you can see here, some of my sample clients where I've done work over the years. So that's just a little bit about me. The crux of what we want to discuss today is really all about organizational alignment and readiness. Many organizations, when you are undertaking any type of supply chain transformation, be it a software implementation or an upgrade or a process design work, frequently organizational alignment and the readiness of the organization to undertake this change is not given a lot of thought. There is the perspective that many organizations, you will just make a decision and say, we are going down this path, we are going to do it, without understanding what it takes to move individuals in the organization along on that journey and aligning them on that journey. So with that said, I want to first take you into Spinnaker's overall organizational change management framework. And with any type of transformation, as you can see here from this particular slide, change is composed of many different things. Whether we were talking about what is leadership saying and doing around this change, how are you aligning your resources, how might skills change based upon any type of transformation which your organization is implementing, and what is the vision of that change? How are you going to guide that elevator pitch throughout the organization and align that vision across different groups? So if you think of change management as these various different components from vision all the way through to leadership, in order for any truly project, whether you're talking supply chain or any type of human resources or financial, this is not limited purely to supply chain type work. In order for any type of implementation or business process or strategic work to be successful, change management is a key component, and all 6 of these areas from vision to leadership are key. If you have a situation where the work that you are doing, leadership is not aligned, or there is a lack of vision, or there may be the potential where you have not laid out a sound plan, or your resources are not aligned, all of these can lead to issues of confusion as to what you may want to be doing with the transformation you're instituting, lead to frustration for your resources, or it leads to a much slower and more gradual change throughout the organization. So in order to really be successful with any type of transformation, you need to ensure that from a change management perspective, you are touching upon all 6 of these areas from vision to leadership. And as such, that is really where organizational alignment and readiness come into play. Now, from a Spinnaker perspective, we envision organizational change management as being a key overlay over Spinnaker's 5 lenses implementation methodology. So Spinnaker's implementation methodology, the 5 lenses are composed of people, process, technology, policies, and metrics. And as you can see, just as with many other implementation methodologies, we actually cover off from an overall programmatic perspective, from assess all the way through to manage, or as other organizations may call it, cut over and go live, depending on the work that is being done. But overlaying that from both a programmatic perspective, how are you running the program, Spinnaker's methodology also overlays the organizational change management component, as you can see at the bottom of the graphic on the slide here. Change management is something that is key, that needs to be discussed and addressed throughout all phases of a project implementation. This morning, going into a bit more detail, If we take Spinnaker's 5 lenses approach to its implementation methodology and delve further into that organizational change management component, you can see on this slide that Spinnaker's implementation methodology is composed of 4 specific components on the OCM front: organizational alignment and readiness, organizational design, training and organizational enablement, and communication. Each of these can be done individually as a specific aspect of change management, or if it is a large project or implementation, taken together holistically. And within each of these 4 OCM components, there are different work plans or activities, tools and templates, deliverables and metrics that we have in place to help guide an organization through that overall change management process in association with any transformation work that you may be doing. If we look at it from a more higher level view, really, if it is a very large scale implementation, typically speaking, you are looking at developing a sound OCM strategy first. So what is that strategy and the scope and objectives associated with your OCM work? And then you use that to drive down into how you're going to do your alignment, design, training, and communication. So it's very similar to what I was discussing previously on the prior slide, where from an OCM strategic perspective, you need to ensure that that strategy and that vision are in place, and then use that strategy and vision and the associated scope and objectives to then drive the individual 4 components within Spinnaker's organizational change management framework. So as I have previously mentioned, our framework is composed of the 4 components. And today, what I specifically want to focus upon is organizational alignment and readiness. Now, a lot of individuals may ask, what exactly is organizational alignment and readiness? And you can really look at this from what are your organizational internal beliefs, what are your internal behaviors? And that really drives how you need to align. Are you an organization that is averse to change? Are you an organization that embraces change but may embrace change slowly? Or are you an organization that is all gung-ho and just goes straight down the path without understanding ramifications of your decisions, which can create other change management issues throughout the life of a project? So understanding how your organization works, how individuals within your organization works, what are some of those rules that you have in place that drive individuals' actions and decisions that may impact the overall transformation initiative that you're undertaking. And really, this is where organizational alignment and readiness comes into play, and it attempts to assess what are all these influences, what are these different levers that should be pulled, or maybe we need to investigate further, and or how do we counter some of these issues to ensure that if some of these levers or groups of individuals are opposed to change, how do we ensure that we align with them and get them along the transformation journey and the transformation objectives that we're going to be putting in place? And that's really the crux of organizational alignment and readiness. How do we get everybody on board the boat and make sure everybody is sailing in the same direction? That's really how you can look at alignment and readiness from an organizational perspective. Now, if we delve a bit further into organizational alignment and readiness, you can really consider it, it's a continuum over the life of a project. And you can see that that continuum curve there. So on the left-hand side, you have behavior. Across the bottom, you have time. And then across the top, you have various phases during any type of implementation. Depending on where you're at in the project, the individuals involved, all of that really drives the messages, the themes, and the information that is being shared across the organization. And it's really important that during specific stages along this implementation curve, that you are working with your stakeholders to identify where there are issues in the overall implementation to gauge the overall progress, and really to identify specific needs of that particular phase of the project? Or does it also mean you may to re-examine the vision you initially laid out based upon issues that you may be uncovering? Alignment is really about doing continuous health checks throughout the life of the project and ensuring that you are making adjustments to the alignment of yourself and folks within your organization. A key component of this overall alignment is really communication, and that will actually be a webinar that we have later on here, which delves into the details around how you set up solid communication plans and alignment activities, as well as the associated education and knowledge transfer that is needed, which will also be another webinar in the Spinnaker's OCM series. In order to ensure that from an organizational perspective, you understand where you are at along this alignment curve, so to speak, regular assessments do need to occur to understand, are individuals within your organization aware of the changes that are ongoing? Do they understand the changes that are ongoing? And are they ready to adopt, or have they adopted the changes? There are too many supply chain initiatives that at the end of the day, it may have been an IT decision that said, we are going to implement this new tool and it will be done by this date. However, if you have not aligned with your business partners on that front, or vice versa, if the business says we're going to implement this particular application and they have not aligned on the IT front, then your overall awareness or understanding or your ability to adopt the change is greatly impacted, and the success of that project is greatly impacted. Now, if we delve into a bit more detail on this alignment continuum, there's really three key behavioral dimensions that you want to consider. There is the leadership component, the stakeholder component, and location readiness. And location meaning whether you're talking corporate, plants, distribution centers, individual, if you're a retailer, individual retail locations. These are all the types of locations. So from an alignment perspective, how do you ensure that your leadership team is aligned, your stakeholders are aligned, and your locations are aligned? Leadership alignment is really key in the sense that that is setting the overall direction and vision of the project. Your leadership team is enabling that shared vision and objectives and discussing what is the business case for this change? Why have we decided to pursue this? Leadership needs to be able to take the ability to advocate and be involved throughout the course of the transformation which your organization is undertaking. And this is really where the elevator pitch or that vision comes into play. Is the leadership team aligned around this elevator pitch, this vision? And is this being consistently communicated throughout the life of the project? Or are you going back and reassessing? Do we need to tweak that vision a bit to ensure that everyone is on board with the transformation which we are undertaking? Stakeholder alignment is another key area. And that's really where you need to ensure and identify pertinent individuals that are really key folks within your organization that will be the cheerleaders for this change, that are aware and knowledgeable and prepared for the business transformation, and they really can take this out to your organization from an overall change agent network perspective. So when you are looking at implementing any type of large-scale transformation, you need that leadership alignment, as I mentioned. You need that vision, you need that forethought. But when it comes time to actually execute and push that change throughout that organization, you need individuals that are well respected within the organization, that carry that clout and have the ability to say, yes, I know part of this transformation is going to be difficult for group A, but here's the reason we're doing it. So those stakeholders play a key role around the overall messaging and the communication that occurs to make sure that all groups stay aligned and ready for this change that is progressing. The last key behavior is really on the location front. So at this point, you've gone from really, you're moving from an overall assessment, and you've made that initial contact, and leadership has created that vision, and that awareness has been built. And you're moving through design. You're usually coming up towards the end of your design, where there may still be some negative views as to what may be going on with this transformation program that you're doing, but you're starting to move into the understanding realm, where the actual individuals that will be using the new system or the new processes, they're beginning to get an understanding as to, oh, this is starting to make more sense to me now. Now I understand why my stakeholder alignment leader, why they were saying that 2 or 3 months ago. This is making sense to me now. And you're starting to move along the continuum to where you have a more positive perception as to the change that is occurring. Location readiness really moves us into the back end of implement and to that cutover and go live phase of the transformation program you may be undertaking. So this is really where you are mobilizing all of your employees, and you are ensuring that from that mobilization that they understand what the new processes and the technologies are. They go through the appropriate training. Where appropriate, they are included in the deployment plans and the deployment discussions. So overall, you can see we've moved along this alignment and readiness continuum from having that initial contact and building that leadership alignment and that vision and strategy. We continue to move along the curve where stakeholder alignment becomes key, and they are working as your overall change agents in helping to build the understanding and influencing and taking it from any negative views of what might be doing to a positive perspective, to ultimately rolling out and mobilizing and initiating that final cutover and go live, and ensuring that each location is ready and trained and willing to undertake this transformation. So during each of these phases, you can see behaviors are changing. Depending on where we are on the time continuum, the view of the change is evolving, hopefully to a positive perspective, and the messages that you are communicating are also changing and evolving, though still based upon that initial vision and strategy that was laid out from a leadership perspective. Now, one thing that I wanted to hit upon a bit more is from the change agent front and the stakeholder alignment. So if you remember on the previous slide, we were discussing stakeholder alignment and the reason that stakeholders are important and aligning the stakeholders. Typically speaking, there are 2 key stakeholder elements associated with stakeholder alignment, that being stakeholder assessments and a change agent network. So generally, your stakeholder alignment, during the course of any type of transformation, you are doing a health check or taking the pulse of the organization. And this can be done via surveys, whether it's like a Survey Monkey or some type of email that goes out that people respond to. But it's really from an assessment perspective with your stakeholders and the individuals that have been identified to be those key stakeholders, that they are incorporating the feedback received on these surveys or these assessments and taking that back up to the leadership view, that leadership alignment, and saying, okay, this is where we have a gap. This is where we may want to consider making changes or communicating better as to the transformation that we're undertaking. Associated with that overall stakeholder assessments are the individuals that you identify as those change agents. So what does that network look like? If you are more of a manufacturing-based organization, what or who are the key individuals within your manufacturing facilities that are the go-to person to communicate the change that is coming? So for instance, if you're implementing some type of new ERP system that is going to impact your manufacturing operations, who within the plant will be that change agent that will communicate the information and the changes? You need to consider your change agent network as the individuals that are the face of the change. These are the individuals that your end users and folks throughout the organization can come to with questions or concern about the transformation that you are undertaking. Now, as I mentioned, part of the overall change agent network is completing the stakeholder assessments. And these stakeholder assessments or change readiness surveys is another way to look at them. It's really about assessing the level that your employees are aware of the change, they understand the change, but more importantly, it allows them to provide feedback on the change and also feedback on the communication that they are receiving regarding the transformation that is ongoing. The surveys are really designed to allow employees to look at different aspects of the transformation. And there's really 5 key categories that when you are assessing the health of the change or doing that health check, there are 5 key areas where you want to consider from any type of change readiness surveys which are circulated throughout the organization. Those really focus on sources of received project communication. Is that communication coming frequently enough? Is it being communicated well to the organization? And the second category is really around awareness and understanding of the process. So typically there will be survey questions that will posit, do you understand the business benefits for this particular transformation? Do you understand how these changes impact your role? And generally speaking, you allow individuals the opportunity to provide free-form feedback as well, so that you can get more detailed information if some of the health check scores are not necessarily that positive. The third area from a survey approach is typically around perception of benefits for employees and or even customers. So do the employees understand what is in it for them and how their lives are going to improve once this initiative is complete? And then, as I mentioned earlier, around effectiveness of communication and overall engagement efforts. Is the communication sound? Is that newsletter that is being circulated quarterly, is that sufficient, or should we move towards circulating communications on a monthly basis or even a weekly basis? Which then ties to the fifth component of any type of survey. What is that preferred method? Is that email newsletter sufficient? Should there be town halls? Should there be lunch and learns? So these are the types of things that from any type of large transformation you need to consider. The change readiness surveys, when executed through your stakeholder assessments and via your change agent network, are really all about how are we doing. That's the key takeaway that you need to take from your change readiness surveys. How is this transformation project being viewed? Is it being viewed well, or is it being viewed poorly? And then that's where the adjustments need to be made from an overall organizational alignment and readiness perspective. Now, the last thing that I would like to hit upon here, if you were to look at what I just phrased around change readiness surveys being around how are we doing, organizational alignment and readiness is about taking any input from those surveys and moving individuals along this continuum of alignment and readiness. And you can view this continuum as prepare me all the way to help me. And really, depending on where you are at, what you are doing from an alignment and readiness perspective can be different. So when you are starting a particular project and you are on that initial assessment phase, this is really focused more around prepare me. So let me understand the reason why we're doing this. How am I impacted by this change? Can you tell me what I might expect? So really, when you are in that initial phase of any type of transformation, it is helping prepare that individual for change. As you continue to move through assessment and you're moving into any type of design work, during the design phase, you're really more about beginning to explain what that change is in more detail, explaining to individual groups what is that change going to mean to them. And you can look at this from, if you've done any type of application implementations, you can look at that as almost the business process work that is being done, or any type of business requirements definitions that are being done. It is this type of information that you can go back and tell the organization and say, here are the processes that are changing. So this is how your group is going to change and evolve. And based upon that change, here are the new business requirements that we've identified. So as part of that change agent network, you are feeding that information back to your organization and telling them what it is that is going to be changing. That then leads into Show Me. So from Show Me, you are now moving into from a design to an implement or build perspective. So you are now ready to implement those new business processes, or you are ready to begin implementing that new system from an overall testing perspective. And this is really where, from a Show Me perspective, you demonstrate to individuals within your organization, what does this new fangled thing that we are working with, what is it going to look like? Demonstrate it to me. Demonstrate the change. Show me what these new processes are going to do. Or if you are implementing any type of system, there is some type of conference room pilot where you are letting individuals get in and play around and begin to understand, where they are getting that look and feel, and you are allowing them to actually see what the new applications may be offering to them. As we continue to move along the alignment and readiness continuum, then it moves into what we can term let me. So really let me practice what I've learned. So we've gone from getting them ready, preparing them, we're telling them via either business process modeling or business process requirements or functional specs or technical specs, what is coming. We have now moved through to Show Me, where we demonstrate those changes via a type of CRP. And now Let Me is where you start focusing on letting them practice what they've learned. So Let Me really entails the detailed training, and then taking that training and applying it to the new process or the new applications that may be implemented. And this is where both training and, if it's any type of ERP or supply chain system you're implementing, where UAT comes into play, user acceptance testing. So we have now taken individuals, and if you think back earlier around the overall behavior and themes along that continuum, we have taken them hopefully from a resistance of change and a negative view of this change to where a positive view of the change around this transformation is occurring. So you can see from a continuum perspective, the change is going from negative to positive. Likewise, from a alignment and readiness, you're going from a prepare me to let me to help me. And help me is really about them, where you're getting to the point where you are cutting over or going live with any new systems or processes. So you are turning that new transformation project over to the end users, and you are allowing them to actually begin using it in a live environment, but you are there to provide that assistance and support. A critical failure for many projects is, over the weekend we're going live with a new application, Monday we're done. So it's critical that from an overall alignment and readiness perspective, that as you move through to that cutover and go live, that help me continues on, and help me should contain some type of hypercare. Is that 3 or 4 weeks of extra work? The project team is going to be available to help guide with any questions that team members may have around what was implemented. Could that help me mean the creation of a center of excellence? Does the supply chain group need to consider realigning roles and responsibilities, and in turn incorporating that into some type of center of excellence where individuals can go for assistance? So from an overall continuum perspective, it is very much about taking individuals within your organization from a prepare me to a help me view of the world, and making sure that from a help me perspective, they continue to be fully aligned. So what we have done here this morning is I have taken you through Spinnaker's view on organizational alignment and readiness. For those that have already listened to the webinar, there is another one which really goes into more detail around Spinnaker's organizational change management framework. And there will be follow-on webinars to discuss organizational design, training and organizational enablement, and communication. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and please do join back in for the follow-on webinar series on organizational design training and communication. Thank you.